Tuesday.
Test, test.
How about you?
I am clear.
Test, test. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Let's get started. We have so much to do today, and I'm so excited. Welcome. The reason I'm speaking into the mic is not really so much for you, as for everyone here. Can you all hear me? You guys, great. Good to have you here. So Jeff Lane, who you see in this box here, and I organized this blue sky workshop on digital ethnography. It's 3:30 in the morning for him, so give him give him a little wave. Poor guy. Oh my gosh. He's gonna make
This
it.
meeting is being recorded.
I just put the program for this session into my Twitter feed. So if you don't know me, my name is Melissa Aronchik. It's such a pleasure to welcome you all here. My Twitter handle is @m_ and my last name Aronchik, which is ARONCZYK. So you can find me. And we are so glad to have you all here. We have I kind of run among existing digital ethnography workshops and also getting to know new people, welcoming new people who are either already practicing digital ethnography or who know nothing about digital ethnography and want to learn. Everyone is welcome, and we are really just trying to build out this network. So we're very happy to have you all here. We really want to consider the evolution and boundaries of digital ethnography. This is something Jeff and I and our group, the Digital Ethnography Working Group at Rutgers, have been sort of worrying about for a while. What even is digital ethnography? Are we at the point where it's just qualitative methods because we are all now online and in the real world at all times, or is there something else to it? And again, we want to just encourage you all to participate as much as possible in today's session, and let me explain what we're going to do. So for the next 10 minutes, we're going to do a lightning round of introductions among the participants. And by participants, I mean those of us who organized the session. I'm sorry to make it seem like there's this two-tiered system. It's just more a question of numbers. In the program, you'll see those of us who got together and organized this workshop. We're going to very quickly introduce ourselves, where we're from, what digital ethnography group we are working with if we have one. And as a provocation, maybe a one-sentence answer to the question, what is digital ethnography, really is an icebreaker. Then we're going to get into breakout groups. And so here I encourage everyone to just get into whatever group they'd like to get into. There are 3 groups. The first one is, switch back to the program here, sorry. The first one is, we've called it boundaries, and that's to be interpreted very loosely. Are you interested in thinking about online and offline boundaries, boundaries of public and private, including things like, if material is private, how do we access it, and so on. Whether that's boundaries of interdisciplinarity, that type of thing. So anything that the word boundaries speaks to you, join that group. The second one is risk. And here we conceptualize that in terms of, for instance, the ethics of data collection, especially, but not exclusively, in digital environments, doing digital ethnography with vulnerable communities and what that means, but also the speed of digital ethnography. So often that sense that sometimes we think of traditional ethnography as something that requires a lot of trust, working with groups, but if you're doing it in a digital space, how do you reckon with questions of trust? And the third group we titled it organization. Again, that can be very broad, but we were mainly conceptualizing it as How do you organize your data? What do you do when you have 800,000 screenshots on your laptop? What do you do with that? Also selection, analysis, and so on. So that'll be the second thing, and then we'll all come back together at the end and share what we've learned in each of the groups, and we'll take it from there. So see if we can fit all of that into the next hour and a bit. I want to really thank Kylie for being our tech person today. Thank you, because if I had to do that by myself, it would just be an absolute disaster. So thank you. Do we have regional hubs here today as well? They wave. Yeah. Hi. Okay, from Manipal? From yeah. So we have some international groups joining us today to observe. So we're really lucky and thankful to have them here. Okay, so let's get started. Each of you, when we speak, we have to use the mic so that these guys can hear. So just as you know, I'm Melissa Aronchik at Rutgers University. What is digital ethnography to me? It's the way we live today. That's my provocation here. So you want to go next, Zoe? Oh, all right.
Hello, I'm Zoe Glatt. I'm a PhD student at the London School of Economics. Thanks, Ludmilla. And I founded the LSE Digital Ethnography Collective, which you can look up on Twitter. If you don't know, we have a reading list that you might find useful. And digital ethnography, I don't know. Ethnography is something that we all love, I assume. But it's just like, for me, digital ethnography is just kind of living in the mediated world and thinking about how people live in the mediated world, I guess. Kind of just being, I don't know, it's early.
By the way, it's all right if people will take photographs. If you don't want to be in a photograph, you just let her know.
Morning, everybody. I'm Caitlin Petrie. I'm a member of the Digital Ethnography Working Group at Rutgers University and a faculty member there. And the first thing I thought of when you said, what is it to you? Just in the spirit of this workshop is like the phrase up for grabs. Like it just feels like there's so much room to sort of figure out what digital ethnography is, which is sort of just me like punting Melissa's icebreaker question to like all of you and us as a group. But I do think that that's true. And I think like there's just in our discussions, we found so many areas where we just have a lot to figure out.
I didn't realize we were freestyling. I wrote something down. My name is Jabari Evans. I'm an assistant professor at the University of South Carolina, focusing on race and media. Digital ethnography for me is a collection of methods that privileges communication with digital tools with the understanding that digital spaces can be standalone field sites to understand individuals or communities.
Yeah, I should have gone before Jabari as usual. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Marler, and I am a postdoc at the University of Zurich in Internet Use and Society. I do ethnographies of vulnerable populations, first of homelessness in Chicago. During COVID-19, I studied low-income older adults living alone at home in my home state in Missouri. I tried to do that virtually with older adults, and I'm still writing that up. For me, digital ethnography, and I'll maybe focus on a kind of methodological tension that we feel as ethnographers often. So digital ethnography in one sentence is extending that awkwardness we feel in other people's spaces to the digital realm for the purpose of learning a more complete view of our participants' life worlds. Okay, so.
Hi, everybody. Fred Lesage. I'm associate professor in the School of Communication at Simon Fraser University, and very jet lagged all of a sudden. I guess for me, digital ethnography is a moment in time where people who practice ethnography are asking questions about what needs to be kept from this tradition, how to reconfigure those elements of that tradition to a moment where digital mediation and mediatization are enabling and constraining our capacity to do that kind of practice.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you and nice to see our colleagues in India and elsewhere. I'm Mirka Madianou. I am a professor at Goldsmiths, University of London, and we have a media ethnography group. So it's not digital ethnography, but of course we do a lot of digital, and I also co-direct the digital culture unit. So in response to Melissa's provocation, I thought digital ethnography for me is iterative, unpredictable, relational, slow. Melissa was talking about speed, and for me it's slow, online and offline, multimodal, reflexive, and surprising.
We have two people joining us from online. Can we hear Jeff and Meow? Yes, great.
Hey folks, nice to see you all. Great definitions. I'm Jeff Lane from Rutgers, joining you from New York, and I think the digital ethnography is really just a curiosity and a willingness and a creativity to understand digital interaction as it fits into people's everyday lives and into community. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be done digitally, insofar as you can do it in person, you can do it online. And it requires, I think, a lot of creativity to do it rigorously and do it well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Miao Lu. I'm now a postdoctoral fellow at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I study digital cultures in a China-Africa context. I did some on-site field work. I haven't done much digital ethnography yet. So I consider this as a great opportunity to learn from you and learn from other participants. So for me, digital ethnography is a way that uses ethnography to conduct research in, through, and about the digital world. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. That was good. We even kept to time. Amazing. Let's break into these breakout groups. So again, please join whichever one you'd like, and feel free to even migrate between the two. Just totally freestyling, to borrow Jabari's term. So why don't we have over here the boundaries kind of thing, just generally in this area, and at the back organization, and then over here in the corner risk. Yes, exactly. Yes, power, vulnerability, and so on.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Sound and clear. I don't turn on my video because of my connection problem, so you can hear me clearly.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know what we should do exactly.
Shall we wait for Melissa?
Is it
She's
a
also
long
in.
time? Hey, hello. Is
Hi.
it a long time, right? For 5 minutes, or what time we should wait them?
Oh, I don't know.
All right.
So it's just us, or shall we wait for Melissa or not? Because according to the file Melissa shared with us, there should be three participants in this session.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Melissa is here, and also Jabari Evans, Professor Jabari Evans. Oh, I don't know.
All right. We just have to wait. Understand.
I have no idea.
All right. Don't worry.
So the idea is that the idea is to break these 10 participants into 3 sessions, as I've told. So there will be 3 to 4 participants for each session. And this session is about boundary, online, offline boundary, public or private boundary, etc. So there's a pose.
Interesting. Okay. So they can tell us what they did offline, right? Later.
Yeah, they will share their field notes and thoughts or questions about these issues. And then we go back to the whole group and we share what we have discussed. So that's what I'm told.
Thank you.
Yes.
For the explanation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But where are other people?
Yes.
Well,
it's a bit confusing.
Decided to have a rest, a little bit, a break. So we should to do something else as well.
Oh, maybe
Yes,
we can discuss. We can also discuss these issues. Let me send a chat to the technician.
I think they forget us.
Yeah. So maybe we can share our questions and thoughts about digital ethnography.
Yeah.
I can start by proposing some of my questions, and So actually, I'm interested in digital ethnography, but I haven't done much of it. My research is about the role of Chinese tech companies in Africa's digital transformation. So I focus on a Chinese mobile phone company called Chenshin, which is the largest mobile phone seller in Africa. So I did my ethnographic fieldwork in both China and Ghana, and I looked at how designers design mobile phone and how users use mobile phone in their everyday life. So a major part of my research is the old school ethnography. So a small part is about digital ethnography. And during the pandemic, I'm also considering doing more, digital ethnography. But I found it impossible to totally rely on online observation and interaction. In my case, this also related to my question about, the online-offline boundary. Because in my case, it's not just about the time difference between me and my participant, but also because many African users haven't gone virtual yet, haven't gone digital yet. So in many African countries, especially the rural areas, internet access is not a given thing. So in Ghana, for example, people have to buy digital bundles to go online, and the data bundles during the night are much cheaper. So a young man I met in Ghana only goes online during the night because this saves a lot of money for him. And he often wakes up in the midnight, download and watch movies. And some scholars have called this phenomenon digital nightlife, which means for some groups, digital life is only available during the night. And for some other informants, some of my informants, they often buy hourly data bundle. And so he's only online when he has the money to buy data bundles at certain hour. So what I have learned from this experience is that online life is often structured by many real life factors. What is taken for granted in one society, especially in the West, may not hold true for another society. So for me, the digital needs to approach in its specific context. And so I think digital ethnography cannot be just virtual or online. Instead, we need to move back and forth between online and offline. And but I'm not sure if this is a unique situation for me, because I mainly study the low-income users in developing countries, and I wonder, are there any cases that digital ethnography is completely virtual or online without any offline interactions? So I wonder if you have some thoughts about it, or if you have something to share.
Very, very cool experience. Actually, I live in Iran, and in Iran, I don't know you're aware, but we have a lot of problems with the internet and technology because of all the sanctions or internal problems. And when you talk about, the digital devices, China produces for Africa, I think about all the digital devices, produced and we have in Iran. For example, we don't access to any kind of Apple Store because we can't, pay anything we don't have PayPal or these kinds of things. And other than that, in terms of, the internet itself, all the infrastructural problems aside, like, not having access to internet in many places or because of many political reasons, we don't have access to lots of websites also. And because of that, many of the studies in this field, not I'm from digital well-being field of study, in the field of communication and internet studies, have not considered situations in developing world, where people, don't have access to all the things they talk about, and they don't consider their people situations there. And I like, I like the things you understood, through your studies about African people, about their lineage and how can, we make things more general, we boundaryless. And I like your study and your insights that you understood during your studies. And actually, your attempt to do a study on those populations. Many of people, many of the scholars in our field of research don't do research, in developing world. They just gather data from their own studies. But yes, I think it's a very, very important issue. It's, the issue that every day we have to struggle with, with the website, with the facilities on digital devices, with the quality of the internet in our country, the domains outside our country, and it makes a huge inequality,
Yeah, I think that's proposed the question about ethnography in and of the global South. We may see some different dynamics compared to studies about the global North, right?
Yes.
So how about Bella? Do you have something to share?
Yes, hello again. I'm thinking, listening to you, I'm thinking about my subject because interest of mine in science are different, but especially they're focusing on media regulation, local community, it's about digital, more digital. It's not only media, but about local community. And I'm from Russia, and you understand what the situation we have right now. Before all our history, we are struggling. We are struggling with imperialism, communism, totalitarianism, authoritarianism, etc. And this is it's more political, more about political culture, not about economy. And this is sadly mirroring in our social networks, not our in global social networks. Today, in our situation, we have a very too much restrictions on media fields. All media fields. We have no free media outlets anymore in Russia. I mean, inside. Outside here, we are reading. Of course, we have our messengers, Messenger, Telegram, for example. ВКонтакте, but ВКонтакте, I can say it's our network. By the way, I didn't say that Instagram and Facebook right now is extremist group. It's funny. For example, not for example, I just want to say that despite my students, they never saw freedom. I worked in 19th as a journalist. I started at that time to work as a journalist. Then in the middle of 20th, in the middle of in 2005, I left media and I chose that time education. So, and of course, despite my education as a linguist and economist, I am thinking always about media freedom, about freedom of how to open your mind, how to open your expression, how to realize your opinion in this situation, even today. So to say about anthropology, for me, it's not so, I'm not so deepest in this field, but I can say that, yes, of course, right now we're trying to realize, to understand after a lot of shocks. Right now we have another stage and understand where we are, how to go further. For example, yesterday we discussed about it. And this is not only about authoritarianism, sorry for my pronunciation. This is about power, about public communication. So I don't know, did I answer to your question for your subject?
Yeah, thank you for your
sorry.
Yes, thank you for your interesting sharing. I think you know, I like me, I did my fieldwork in Ghana, and and the other participant is from Iran, and you're from Russia. I think we are, you know, I think our stories demonstrate that the internet is so different in different places, right? So in the internet ecosystem, internet culture vary from society to society. And that's why, you know, when we study the digital, we always need to approach it in its specific social cultural context. And that's why I think it is you know, important to move back and forth between online and offline, and because just relying on online observation is often, you know, insufficient for us to interpret this you know, this data. You can collect a lot of materials online on different social media platforms, but oftentimes you need to interpret it in its and I guess it will, you know, the meaning making and the power issue would be very different in Ghana, in Iran, or in Russia.
Thank you for understanding. Yes, you're absolutely right. I think to understand behavior, people behaviors, communities behavior. It's very important for taking decision, as Hannah Arendt says, right? Making opinion making, decision taken, right? So it's very important to us. Sorry to interrupt. Okay.
No worries. Actually, I also have a question, about the boundary between the public and the private space, so I wonder if you have similar concerns. And my question is less about our informants or subjects, but more about us, the researchers. Like when you do digital ethnography, when you study people on social media, you follow people on social media, and they may follow you back, right? I wonder, will you use your personal account to do this, or will you set up a new account? And we will make different decisions for different platforms. Because I have this question because during my fieldwork in Ghana, I often interact with local people through WhatsApp, and when I asked my participant if I can add them on WhatsApp, they never refused. But every time we became WhatsApp friends, they will know my mobile phone number automatically, and sometimes they will call me directly. And well, most of the time it's nice to chat with them after I finish my interviews, or even after I have left Ghana. But sometimes, they keep calling me, and because I'm studying this Chinese mobile phone company in Ghana, they assume Chinese people are rich, or I'm working for this company, so they want me to help them with their business. Or sometimes they assume I can help them get a Hong Kong visa simply because I'm from Hong Kong. So overall, I can handle this, misunderstanding after some explanations, but it makes me think about the tensions in balancing our research and our private space, especially when it comes to digital ethnography, because our interaction is deeply mediated by this digital technology. So I think I can handle WhatsApp, but I am not sure, how I will deal with other social media platforms like Facebook, WeChat, which is often used in China.
Yeah,
So,
I have. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have WeChat with my Chinese students as well, because it's better to interact personally, sometimes. So rather they don't have Telegram with Russians. Russian students, I communicate in Telegram as usual. In ВКонтакте, sometimes better to organize groups, chats. That's it. On Facebook is more about wider community with my colleagues from journalism, from different media, from my past, from universities, from all over the world. But right now, in this situation, I closed all of my accounts, personal data, because I've met, we have, honestly to say, and to be open, we have very different situation with personal data as I understand, right? From every, not every, I guess, because in Africa, I know there are maybe even worst issues, problems, but we have very difficult situation, especially in law. Even our authorities, different frauds use our data for different, not very good, as I can say, so, in the bad way. So right now, when when you have unstable situation, when country or any society in crisis, you should be careful, especially with technologies first, information, right? And to be very, how to say,
It's difficult, right?
Yeah, it's difficult. Just understand we've been in shock all of this time, 3 months, and right now we are trying to not to take it. Some people trying to take it, or some people already taken it, but for my family, for my daughter, for myself, for my close circle, for some of my colleagues, it's always about this situation, this war is about, and this stage is about not to wait, to struggle we can, because we can, they can take us in jail, or they can take all of our money from our account. So just, it's difficult right now, this stage. And we should think about talking about personal data. We should think about our secure.
Yeah.
That's why openly to say about communicative theory, this theory is not work for us, but we should say about crisis, right? As a public relations specialist, before I can say that this first rule should work in any crisis. You should be opened. Okay.
Yeah.
but we can't right now. Okay, I'm keeping my mouth. Sorry to take your time.
It's okay.
Thank you. Mia, I pronounce your name right? Mia?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
You proposed a very good question, and about your participants, I agree with Bella. Actually, in Iran, also we use Telegram, but with the VPN. We have to use VPN because it is filtered. Many of channels, YouTube filtered, Netflix, Twitter, all the things are filtered, and sometimes people, researchers like us, don't think about these issues, So
you
go ahead.
So you also need to use a VPN in Iran?
Yes.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hey everyone, let's come on all back together and we can report back to the group. Not sure. Will, do you want to report for your group? Do you feel like you have a sense of what people were talking about? That would be great.
All right. Hi, everyone. So from the organization group, I'm just going to start with a few that I noticed. So first, we had, I think, at least 4 different qualitative coding tools that were mentioned. So people are turning to different tools online for the kind of organization and analysis of their data. So there was kind of we think of a fire hose as like coming out of the Twitter API or something, but that also happens in ethnography. More data than we know we're taking in and more data than we know what to do with. So thematize as you're writing your field notes, right? Like don't assume that you can save, a terabyte of data that you're going to come back to later. A lot of us talked about like, tell us why the TikTok video is meaningful, probably, and save yourself that effort later. Analysis is not a solo process. So you may have collaborators that you're analyzing with, but as an ethnographer, you also have your participants. So go back to them. That's the kind of advantage we have over just content analysis later. Right. But maybe there's something else. Holly took notes. I won't put her on the spot, but does anyone else want to like?
Yeah, you can ask one up and want to share something from the group that you found interesting or something you want to get feedback on? Yeah. We covered a lot of stuff. I think it was one of those. I can go.
So yeah, just quickly, I think we talked also about how to think through different kinds of data and what that means. So not only like, how do you deal with screenshots versus like a post that you can go back to versus an interview transcript versus like, other types like a group chat or something. And then this might also just be like my own preoccupation, but we talked about for those of us who are kind of trained in more like traditional in-person, sociology or anthropology, ethnographic methods, like how do we make sense of things like field notes in a digital context where you may have, a transcript, a literal word for word transcript of what transpired in a digital space and, on social media or something. And so how do you kind of fit, how do you think about kind of thick description that would typically be in field notes in a context where you have, those transcripts already available to you in a way you never would in person, and in a way that's both like a huge advantage and sometimes overwhelming.
I can add one thing, which we kind of touched on, but I was about to say it and I didn't say.
We were kind of talking about like the difference between let's say pre-digital ethnography and digital ethnography. And I was just thinking about the fact that I think sometimes we get a bit stuck on the distinction between the two and like how different it is now. Obviously, also people have been talking about digital ethnography for like 30 years, so it's not a new thing anyway. But I also think that like in kind of traditional anthropology or sociology ethnography, you have a lot of different pieces of data. So it's not just thick description. You might be having interviews. You also have artifacts, like you find things, you write notes about objects that you found or stuff like that. So I kind of think it's very similar. Like you're gathering a screenshot, and we have to think about what these different kinds of data are doing, but that's not a new thing. So I think like sometimes we get a bit stuck on the like, it's so different that we can't deal with it, but actually everything is data in ethnography, and it always was. So I think that's kind of when you feel overwhelmed by like, how do I deal with this? What does it mean epistemologically to deal with a Twitter thread, let's say? It's kind of just like, chill.
Anyone else for the organization group? Even like questions, anything? Okay, maybe again, if something comes up later, feel free to jump in. Do you guys want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to start and maybe others can chip in because we went through a lot.
This is a risk group, yes.
We kind of didn't frame it as risk necessarily. We were started thinking about ethics, and actually ethics is not necessarily the useful term here because we really think this is all about power. So that was what we were talking about, the power relations that underpin any research project, and particularly ethnographic projects. And that, of course, permeates everything. So there were a number of issues that we talked about. One was presence, which I think is particularly relevant to online ethnography, where the researcher may not always be visible. It's particularly pertinent to projects like involving live streaming. And how do you make your presence known to people who might be participating? It's very different, let's say, in the co-present setting when you'd be in the town square and everybody could actually see you. But in that online space, how do people know that they are participating in your research project? And how often do you remind them when everything's so diffused? And perhaps even the participants or your interlocutors are not always stable. They're not always the same people, again, depending on the different projects. So this also links to questions of consent, broadly defined, because we were very clear that the typical model proposed by our ethics committees is not always fit for purpose, and doesn't really work for ethnography generally to have consent forms and even asking people to sign when a lot of the research is based on informal conversations and so on. So rethinking that and maybe voicing these concerns about how can we approach consent and power dynamics beyond the models proposed by ethics committees, which fetishize these forms and the bureaucracy. We need a different model. We need also them to understand that research is much slower and that they have to figure out that, sometimes you're not ready to write the first chapter of your PhD 3 months into the fieldwork, and you might need a little bit longer because of, the volume of material you're grappling with, as you were saying earlier. Another big issue is this, of course, anonymization of your participants and making sure you don't harm vulnerable participants. Especially, we had Olga talking about her participants in war in Ukraine, Charlie talking about vulnerable refugees in the camp that she's been working on in the Myanmar Thailand border. But there is another tension there about participants often wanting to be named. Even if they are minoritized groups, they will say, I want you to tell my story and I want you to use my name. How do we deal with that when we know that they could further down the line be harmed? And I think you two may want to say more about this because it really speaks to your research. So far I've spoken about vulnerable groups mostly, but my interest in this was about working with experts, although I've done work with vulnerable communities, but at the moment I'm working with experts, working with developing technological innovation in response, let's say, to refugee crisis or other humanitarian emergencies. And I find often I disagree with their approach. So even in the past, I used empathy to make sense of what communities or people, my interlocutors, felt. Now I feel empathy is not really the way to go necessarily, because I'm much more critical of some of these practices. But how do I deal with that? And how do I also make sure my participants are not harmed? Because expert interlocutors or participants can be harmed. They're not always they're not always Mark Zuckerberg. They could be mid-ranking officials and so on. So how do we deal with expert interviews and respecting our participants, whilst also perhaps often being critical of their practices, if that is relevant? So there isn't really any recipe for all these issues. They're very messy, they're very problematic. And what we were saying is, how do we deal with it is by keeping diaries, talking about them, writing about them. There isn't really a way to necessarily solve them. And every project will have its own particularities, but it's really about, keeping a record, reflecting constantly, and also being open about our own positionality. Another, I think Olga might want to add about the particularity of doing research in times of war, and how you feel perhaps particularly, your participants might be particularly vulnerable in that context. And one way also we can deal with these power inequities is to go back to our participants and say, hey, here's what I think I've understood through my time with you. What do you think? But you can't really do that in these really sort of dangerous and conflicted situations. And so how do you deal with those tensions there? So come and add more, because I'm sure I've left out so much.
It's perfect.
So for our group on boundaries, actually, Mirka, a number of the things you raised, I'm taking all these notes. There's quite a lot of overlap as would be expected. But you're giving me some great ideas. I'm going to have to come talk to you in a moment. Some of the things that came up for us, I'll summarize, but if I leave something out, anyone else, please come in. So when you're thinking about boundaries, one is maybe, sorry, let me back up and say that for me, what I hear when people are talking about their dilemmas is that we already have dilemmas when it comes to thinking about the digital. We already have a whole set of issues that arise. Then we have a whole other set of issues that arise when thinking about ethnography, and we always have. When you put those two terms together, that conjunction, it raises a very novel set of problems, I think. And so some of them maybe can be resolved by resorting to one or the other of those established paths or more established paths, but some of them are very unique to digital ethnography specifically. So that's what I'm thinking about here. So for instance, one boundary we were discussing is one's own privacy, as well as the privacy of the people we're researching. Do you create a separate account to reach people, a special social media account? And if you do, how are you going to establish trust? How are you going to reach out to that person? Maybe you're preserving your own privacy, but at what cost? Similarly, same thing with the subjects that you're working with. If you're one of the people that you're studying, Jabari was talking about this, are you being extractive? Are you manipulating those people to get what you want? And how does the digital space particularly enable certain kinds of manipulation? So again, this is a pre-internet problem, pre-digital problem, but in the digital space, I think it takes on different kinds of meanings. One thing that really compelled us, I think, was when talking about digital ethnography is the always on problem. You are always potentially doing field work. How do you create boundaries for yourself? So sometimes it's a question of self-care. It's 10 p.m. I shouldn't be still on TikTok. But as Jess was saying, like, what if you're on TikTok at 10 p.m. and you see something incredibly essential for your research? You pull out your research, your recorder or your camera, your screenshots, exactly, your notebook. So, in a way, we're drawn to ethnography because we care about people, but if those people are always on, how do you be always on with them, or should you be always on? Something else that came up that I took a note on was, is stalking digital ethnography? So, what does that mean? Like, how much should you know about people? In some sense, that's how I think about it anyway. Jabari talked about getting blocked by someone he had followed for a while. So, what does that mean? If you've had a relationship with someone and then their own online presence changes, for instance, like in Jabari's case, it was someone who achieved a certain notoriety and had a bunch of followers, and then suddenly they didn't want to share anymore. Suddenly there's an issue of, no, this is my content, it's mine. I don't want to be part of your research program anymore. I think that's what I have, but I think that I maybe have left some things out. So if anyone else wants to jump in from our group, please feel free. Yeah.
You covered pretty much everything. I think one of the other things I want to kind of, put out there is the logics of each platform. And the logics can change, right? So I talked about how, in person, if I'm seeing a young person light up a joint, I can excuse myself a certain way. If I'm online and I see a young person light up a joint, it has a different cadence, so to speak. Like I can't necessarily, I don't know. There's, particularly with the newer work I've been doing with drill artists, where I'm seeing young people sometimes do criminal things online, say criminal things online. I thought about this sort of as Melissa was talking, is like the logics change. Whereas if I'm in the field, I can sort of just leave. But if it's online, I'm still sort of like, it's content. So I'm sort of attracted to it. and you want to use it because it's great data, but then the logics change and those boundaries change, because then it's like, should I be telling someone about this? Is it performative? Because that's the other thing, is a lot of my subjects would curate things that were fake, and so you have to figure out, what is your boundary where you're willing to go with pursuing data online. And I think the other thing that came out, I don't remember who said this, was the other part of logics is being tagged, or, vice versa, you tagging a person or them tagging you, and how that can kind of change the anonymity of who you are, what you're trying to do, maybe place you in a vulnerable position if you didn't necessarily want to be tagged or put out there, and vice versa. And these logics of these platforms kind of being different. And so I think that kind of dovetails what Melissa was saying for the most part.
We have people who want to weigh in from the online world, Jeff or Meow or others?
Well, we ended up talking about privacy risks quite a bit, and I'm not sure if we were supposed to be on risks or boundaries. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Anyway, we started out kind of looking at two examples of what to do with the kind of networked privacy dilemma, and well, actually the first level privacy dilemma of just how do we get consent, and who are the gatekeepers of a community, and what that looks like. And then the kind of, network privacy piece of like, okay, assuming we've gotten some, measure of consent from some folks, what do we do about the networked parties connected to those consenting participants, and the fact that we're constantly seeing and collecting data on all these folks that are third parties as well. And we looked at like two examples of dealing with it. One was like a very clean, matter of fact, controlled way of dealing with it, where you basically are, scrubbing every screen grab by cropping or covering, identifying images or names, and then creating like a new file where you've, identified the file and the folks by some pseudonym or some ID number or something like that. And we talked about then, that's very labor intensive and very considerate, but also very labor intensive and very tricky for an ethnographic project that isn't linear, where it's very emergent what the story is. And so, to preemptively cut out a lot of material could be really difficult and problematic. And then we looked at another example that had a different way of being considerate, that was around creating a network on Instagram. The researcher had created a network on Instagram, following only public accounts, following folks that were part of the conversation that she was interested in, and then, creating like a new account for research purposes, putting up some selfies and describing the research a little bit in the bio, and then having like a link to a personal website that described the research in greater length, and then engaging with folks in the network that was created connected to that account, and liking folks' content and trying to kind of make presence known that way, assuming that some people are going to come back to the site and see, okay, this is a researcher. And then another kind of level of consent going forward with interviews, right? So actually reaching out to a subset of folks and again, kind of explaining the research, and then, choosing to write about only people that had not just public accounts in the sense of, okay, set to public, but like recognizing that there was a lot of variation in just how public facing folks were. There were, anonymous people, and then there were sort of fully disclosed people. So choosing to write about examples of folks that were the most public, and then still kind of like intervening in the images that were reproduced in a paper, intervening in some of the examples and the materials from those folks. So we talked a little bit about, those sort of two kind of comparative cases, and ways of being considerate, and ways of thinking about privacy, and ways of being transparent about research and stuff like that. And then we kind of pivoted to a couple of dilemmas for the folks in the group who were part of online communities that were in different ways centered on health. So what do you do when you want to study a community that you've been a part of without a research purpose. You know, when you started out because you actually genuinely have a health concern, or you have something going on in your life where you seek that support for yourself personally, and then you're trying to align your research interest that's emerging. And what do you do then? Do you create a new account? Do you create a new community, or do you kind of go back to this community with your new research intention? And how do you make that clear? And what are the ethics of that? And we just spent some time kind of wrestling with that a little bit. So, a very classic dilemma too of studying your, the things that you already know and the people that you're already connected to.
So there are 3 participants in my session, one from Iran, one from Russia, and I am from China, but I did my fieldwork in Ghana. So we are all from the global south. And we discussed several issues about the boundaries, and some of them overlapping to what you have discussed, you have mentioned, like the private public space. And meanwhile, we also discussed some issues that might be unique for the global south. For example, we discussed the online offline boundary, and we found that the internet access is not a given thing in many African or Asia countries. Like in Ghana, some of my subjects or my interviewees only go online during the night because the data bundles are much cheaper during the night. So it can save a lot of money for them. And some Ghanaians go online at a certain point. They can buy hourly bundle. So they are not always online. They are online. They are only online when they have the money to buy the data bundles at a certain point. And in the case of Iran, there are a lot of infrastructure breakdown. And in Russia, there are internet, there are media regulations, restrictions. So for us, we found that it's quite difficult to totally rely on online observation and interaction. So we have constantly moved back and forth between online and offline. And I think it suggests that what is taken for granted in one society may not hold true for another society. What is digital always needs to be approached in its specific social cultural context, especially for research about the global south. And we'd like to propose one question to the whole group. Are there any cases that digital ethnography can be completely virtual or online without any offline interaction? So how far can we go in doing digital ethnography? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Those are really valuable perspectives for us, both Jeff and Miao. We like especially having our regional hub visitors from St. Petersburg and from Manipal in India. We are there. We're at the end of time, believe it or not. We've kind of made it right to the end. We have like maybe 2 or 3 minutes left, and I invite you to just talk to other people here. That's pretty much what we do, right? So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all the participants. Thank you, Kylie. Thank you, everyone. Really great. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that Google Doc that I shared, I'm going to make it editable. And I would love it if you want to add ideas, if you want to put your name, we have our digital ethnography working group too. I'll put that link in, and those of us who have digital ethnography groups, I think like Zoe and others have already put their information on there. So please, let's use that document maybe as a live document, and we can all add some stuff onto it. So, okay, thank you.
The recording has stopped.